Hi guys, this is Lalana. Thanks for tuning in to the Sovereign Path. So today we're going to talk about the 3D game. So this is a pretty clear and concise way of sort of like reeling yourself in if you're a divine feminine and knowing where you're at in regard to your frequency, in regard to your vibration, in regard to moving forward right on the ascension path, is to really pay attention to, are you still playing the 3D game, right? In relationships specifically, because that's what we're talking about mostly on this channel, with your twin flame. So specifically what I mean by this is, are you still working out because you think that that's what your divine masculine wants you to look like? Are you still getting your hair done the way that you think that your divine masculine would want you to look? Are you doing the healing work or the shadow work because your end goal or your game is to come back into physical union with them? What are you doing in regard to those same patterns and programs that you've done in past relationships in order to get your twin flame's attention, right? So the thing is, on this path, and once you're going through the ascension process, is that none of those things that are based on externalities that you have been running in past relationships will work with the divine masculine. I think my camera's sort of crooked. Sorry guys, got a new phone. I think it's kind of wobbly if it looks like that on your side. So this is what we're talking about. When we are looking at the 3D game, which is what I call it in regard to romantic partnership, and this is regardless if you're on a twin flame path or not. This is just general. This is just, we're talking about twin flames on this channel. But in general, playing that 3D game is exactly that. So in the past, if you were, in a karmic relationship and something went wrong, and your first instinct or your first inclination was either to go into victim mode and hopefully they would feel bad for you, and then that would sort of turn the relationship back around, or on the flip side of that, you went into, let me make this person jealous by flirting with this person, or let me ghost them, or let me block them so they think that I've moved on, or let me just like blatantly start dating somebody else in order to incite some sort of reaction from my twin. Whatever those sort of things are, or anything you can fill in the blank, these are 3D games, right? These are the games that we play in order to get validation in some way from that person, right? It's those games that we play that are trying to elicit a reaction, right? It's for the ego. The ego feels better when it gets some sort of reaction from the romantic partner or the ex-romantic partner, however we want to word that, that is feeding that sense of self. So it's like a backward loop of feeding that sense of self, the false sense of self, which is the ego, the mind patterning and the thought system and the emotional pain body. We're trying to feed that through the external from our twin, right? Or from an ex, however we want to look at that, right? Because this is basically the same thing. So you can go out and make a karmic partner jealous. You can make a soulmate potentially jealous. You can buy a new outfit and, go to the gym and do all of these things to like improve yourself in the outward, appearances and all of these sort of things. And they may work with a karmic partner. They may work with a soulmate, right? They may work with someone who's not in your soul family at all who you're dating. These sort of techniques and strategies work in a lot of those situations. They don't work with a twin flame. They will never work with a twin flame. So as soon as we're in that place of saying like, okay, I'm going to get my hair done because I think my twin flame would like my hair more like straight, or they like it better curly, or they like it better dark, or they like it better light, or they like me when I weigh like 110 pounds, or they like it when I weigh 140 pounds, or they like it when I'm really fit, or they like it when I'm really skinny, or you know, it's like the mind is just like goes on and on and on. It's basically saying, how do I create myself in the external in order for this person to like me, want me, you know, come back to me, be attracted to me, right? Those are 3D games. Those are basically saying, as long as I am fixing, you know, the outside, then I am going to attract this person back into my life. Or as long as I'm playing this sort of game by ghosting, blocking, gaslighting, whatever, validating, manipulating, some sort of other thing that's going on, then, you know, I'm going to get my, like, you know, my reward, my validation, all of these sort of things. Whatever it might be, like we could just like go on and on and on about how these things sort of myriad in so many different ways, right? Whatever any of those are, they still are not going to work with the twin. And I did another video on blocking your twin and ghosting your twin. I'll release that one as well. Guys, if we're blocking our twin, right, because we need to feel some sort of relief, and because we need to sort of, you know, get a hold of our emotions and get a hold of our thoughts and all of these sort of things, and we need to block, you know, other people that they may know or that we may know mutually, and all of these sort of things. These are games. These are all coming from the mind. Like if you need to block someone because there's a stalker situation or it's a dangerous situation or whatever, yeah, of course, that's a different situation. But if that's what's going on, you're not dealing with your twin flame anyway, right? Because the twin flame doesn't fall into the toxic, abusive, karmic, all of those sort of frameworks that you would feel the need to block someone. That's not your twin flame if that's what's going on anyway. But if we're blocking the twin flame, right? If we're ghosting the twin flame, if we're ignoring the twin flame, right? If we're doing all of these sort of tactics, these are all still the external tactics. If you're blocking your twin flame, then you're blocking yourself, right? If you need to block your twin flame in order to feel some sort of relief, then it's an attachment issue. It's something that you need to deal with in regard to the thoughts that are coming up, right? It's something else that's going on, right? That's going on within the dynamic that you are sort of feeling into. As soon as I take this external action, then that means that the energy is going to calm down. The energy is the energy is the energy. And the thing is that's your energy. The twin is you, right? This is your energy that you're dealing with. You are the creator on this path. You are the creator of your reality, regardless of whether or not you're on a twin flame path, right? And so we really need to like kind of get sort of finite and definitive in regard to all of these outward tactics that I call the 3D game that we are, you know, using in regard to sort of be able to navigate this path in some sort of way that the mind feels that this is the way that it needs to go. The thing is we keep coming back to the mind, we keep coming back to the emotional body. All of these things are egoic structures that are saying, I need to do these things in order to have this reward, or in order to have this outcome, or in order to have this, you know, whatever it might be, whether it's positive or negative, right? We keep looking outside ourselves on this path, thinking that as soon as I do the work, as soon as I block them, as soon as I ignore them, as soon as I cut cords with them, which is not possible, by the way, you know, as soon as I watch this next tarot thing, you know, as soon as I date somebody else and move on and I don't have to deal with them anymore, as soon as I get out of Delulu, right, that whole thing, as soon as I let go of the fantasy, as soon as it's just like, you know, it goes on and on and on. So this is the thing that your ego is playing games with you, right? And this is why I make it super, super clear on this path or in this channel over and over on my videos. If you're not experiencing a spiritual awakening and you're not experiencing ascension, then at this point you're not experiencing a twin flame dynamic. And if you're not experiencing those things, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going round and round and round, kind of, trying to elicit all of these other things in order to get someone back who is actually not your twin flame at all, because your ego has identified with all of these, programs and patterns and characteristics that the mass majority of twin flame information out there is selling, then that's something that you need to be super aware of. Because if you're really a true twin flame and you're on this path, then you are ascending, then you are awakening, right? Then you are shifting in consciousness and your energy is shifting. And in those places, you resonate with the messages that I bring through on this channel, because the messages on this channel are always going to bring you back to yourself, right? I'm always going to be saying you need to come back to you. I'm always going to be saying that you need to stop focusing on the external twin or any external things that you might be doing in order to try to get them back, including shadow work, including inner work. And I've done a couple videos on that as well. Are you still doing the shadow work? And what story are you telling? Because if we're still trying to do the healing work that has become so mainstream and trendy with the end goal of thinking that that's going to bring my twin flame back, then we're still out there outside looking at things to have this end goal of getting the twin back. We need to get away from this narrative on this path, right? We really need to break free of the games that we're playing and the thoughts that we're believing in and what the ego mechanisms are doing based on an old template in 3D and third dimensional romantic relationships that we are playing, right? That we have been running, that we are used to. We need to break out of that. And if you're on this path, you are being forced to pretty much break out of that, because that's what awakening does. It's a shift out of the 3D constructs of the ego, the mind, and the emotional body, and coming back into the fact that I am pure source consciousness. That's ascension, right? That process is going to break you loose from wanting to play those 3D games. If you're on this path, you're going to get to a point where you realize the 3D games don't work at all with the twin. So it doesn't really matter what I do. And you come to find that pretty quickly. It doesn't really matter what I do, right? In regard to anything external to get my twin back, right? The only thing that matters on this path is that I'm focusing on my evolution, my consciousness, my awakening, my ascension, and my inner union and love for self and with self, right? So it's really important that we keep coming back and we sort of give ourselves these sort of checks. I like to call them people would say you're getting tests from your higher self or you're getting tests from the universe. Well, the universe and the higher self are you. So it's actually the higher vibration of you that's testing you. But we can also do this very consciously as we're just understanding and realizing and having that moment that we're just really paying attention to what's going on in our thoughts, what's going on in our head. What is our inner talk saying? Is what my inner talk saying right now in my highest good? Or is what my inner talk saying right now coming from my ego, right? Is my ego trying to convince me that if I just do more healing work, or if I just show up in this different way with my twin flame, or if I just ghost, or if I just block, or if I just work out a little harder, or if I just move wherever, right? We need to understand, is the ego trying to convince me to do things in order to get some sort of reward? And is that in my highest good? Or is what I am hearing and what I am tuning into my intuition, right? So basically what we're saying is that, am I moving from my heart space, which is my true compass, right? Which is my consciousness, or am I moving from my mind, which is trying to break everything down, understand everything, put everything into boxes, make it all logical, and so then therefore from A to B to C is going to B to D. What exactly am I listening to? This is a huge, huge thing on this path. What am I listening to, and what power am I giving it, right? The thing is that when we're always paying attention to like how this thing works and how this thing works and how this thing works in regard to this path, which is largely distorted, I hate to say, but it is largely distorted because it's still focusing on that end goal of the external reality of having the physical romantic union with the twin. We're still pushing that narrative. I don't push that narrative, but that narrative is still being pushed. And that narrative is what's going to make the ego play that 3D game. Because the ego thinks, and you think that your ego, most of us do until we get further along on the ascension path and you realize you're not the ego, you're consciousness. But when we're in the middle of this path, in the beginning of this path, and the ego still has the upper hand, and you still think that you are that, then the ego is going to be trying to like pull out all of the ammunition that it's been using for however long from the 3D game of relationships that you've been playing with other partners. And it's going to think that it just has to like do those same things, maybe just at a slightly heightened, vibration in order to bring that twin back in. Or it's going to feed into what all of these other things are saying, like, as soon as I heal, then they're going to come back in, right? There's so many things going on this path. There's so many things going on this path, and I'm trying to make it simple. And at the same time, I understand that there's so much information out there that makes it very complicated. And it's really not very complicated. It really isn't. This is your same energy. And I keep wanting, and I keep reminding my own self when I'm making videos for you guys, to stop using certain terminology, but it's just so natural for me to say they or them, right? This comes from a place that's saying that they are separate from you. And I know that that sounds crazy. It does, it sounds crazyville. But we also have to come into the awareness that we are pure source consciousness, and everything that we see in our external reality is pushed out from us. So we are literally creating it. We are master creators on this path. And so when we're trying to attract other people and other circumstances and other things through the externality of what I look like on the outside or what I'm doing on the outside, like I've said before, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, instead of staying in our consciousness, which is being and understanding that we are creating from within, then we just keep going in loops. Right? We just keep going round and round and round. And that's what this 3D game does, right? That's what the ego pushes us to do, largely on this path, until we've come into that higher awareness that, oh, right, I'm not my mind, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my ego. I'm not any of those things, right? And I need to be aware that I'm not any of those things. And I need to be aware of what those things are trying to convince me, not only that I am, but also are trying to convince me of what to do on this path, what to do with awakening, what to do with the twin, all of these sort of things. Because all of those things are actually what's keeping you from you. Those are the things that are keeping you from your true consciousness, that are keeping you from continuing to ascend on this path, which is the purpose of this path. So the more we're focused on that physical aspect of the twin, and we're not really like aware yet or paying attention yet, or the ego keeps convincing us otherwise, that we are not the same consciousness of our twin. We are the same consciousness as our twin. We are the same energy as our twin, right? They are us, they are you. There is actually no separation. It just looks like this in the third dimensional reality because this is the game that we've come here to play. Awakening shifts you out of the game that you came here to play. And so we need to stop playing the game once you hit this path. Once you hit this path, the game can no longer be played if you're going to continue on an ascension path, right? It's the let go or be dragged thing that I keep talking about, right? You can keep playing the game, but it's going to be a road of hardship and difficulty and all of those sort of things, because you're trying to basically have 1 foot in the 5D and 1 foot in the 3D. And we're straddling this path on some level. And so we're just sort of rocking back and forth, trying to figure out like, well, I'm doing the work, and so why isn't it happening? Or I'm doing these things, and so why isn't it happening? And so then we get frustrated and we fall back into the old pattern. Well, screw it then, I'll just date other people. And so then something else happens, and then we're going further down into the rabbit hole. All of these things that are going on that just make you feel like you're spinning, that's coming from ego. It's coming from ego convincing you that you need to do these certain things on this path that are being talked about on lots of other channels and lots of information, that these are all the things that you need to do. And so then right? But most of those things are still coming from the third dimensional construct of relationships and the way that we used to play them and the patterns and the programs that we used to run. All of that stuff needs to get dropped if you're on this path. None of that stuff is going to work if you're on that path. And that's why this path starts to feel very difficult, is because we're basically trying to straddle two worlds. We're trying to straddle two different vibrations and two different frequencies, right? And so we're halfway in our old life and we're halfway in our new life, and we don't know how to make these things meld. I'm going to do a video on this. How do you just like live a normal life, which is what one of my subscribers left in the comments. I'm going to make a video on that. How do you live a normal life on this path when you're so used to playing programs and patterns and doing everything based in the 3D separation consciousness? Now you're on an awakening path, shifting into unity consciousness. What does that look like? Right? It means you have to let go of the old constructs and the old programs and the old patterns. And it means you need to embrace your consciousness and this path and the ascension, which also you need to release the idea that this path is about physical romantic union with the twin. It isn't. It isn't. And I know that triggers the hell out of so many people. The romantic union that is a potential on this path, I'll keep saying, is the icing on the cake. It's the icing, right? It's the cherry on top. It's the thing that once you come into inner union, you get to decide if that's the path that you want to continue to walk. But if you're not in inner union, if you haven't come back home to consciousness, this path will continue to feel like it's dragging you around like a Raggedy Ann doll attached to a merry-go-round. It's just going to keep whipping you around because you're still trying to run that 3D program and that 3D pattern, right? Anything that we try to do to earn the twin flame physically to come back into our life, or to have the twin flame validate us in any way at all, is going to backfire. It is the opposite of what this path is. And this is the most difficult aspect of this path for most people, because we are being told that this is romantic partnership, that that's what this is, and that's the purpose of this, and that's why they're here. The purpose of this is your ascension, right? The purpose of this is your spiritual awakening. Once you get on this path and you go through the spiritual awakening, you go through ascension and you come into inner union, then you have the potential to be in that physical union with the twin flame. But at that point, being in that physical union with the twin flame is not going to look like it looked in the 3D programming with your karmics and your soulmates and your other romantic interests. It's not going to look like that because you're not going to be running that 3D program anymore. You're not going to be running separation consciousness anymore once you come into inner union. Inner union is unity consciousness, which means all of your romantic partnerships and platonic relationships are going to shift, because now you have shifted from within. You shift your energy and everything in your external reality matches it. That's just the way that it works. That's why I'm always saying, as within, so without. It's not a cliche. It's not some really like stupid thing that everybody's saying. This is actually how your true essence of consciousness works. Whatever's going on within you is going to show up in your external reality. Whatever you're believing, whatever you're focusing in, whatever you're, all those things going on that everybody's heard a million times, those things are going to show up in your external reality. So if we're still playing the 3D game in the twin flame dynamic, the 3D game is what's going to continue to show up in your external reality, right? If you're shifting into unity consciousness, then unity consciousness is going to show up in your external reality in regard to the twin as well. That partnership is going to look different, breathe different, feel different, act different than the partnerships that you have been experiencing in your past, because you're no longer going to be running those programs anymore. So we need to let go of the concept of, as soon as I come into a romantic partnership with my twin flame, it's going to be just like other partnerships I had in the past, except better. Now, it's going to be at a completely different frequency. It's going to be at a completely different vibration. And that's the thing, is that we're chasing something on this path, and it's being taught as well that we're chasing this thing on this path that we have not experienced at all. So we really don't know what we're chasing, because we're so focused on the physical twin that we're not focused on our inner union or on our spiritual journey, right? Once you're focused on your spiritual journey, those old patterns and programs and relationships that you used to run are not going to interest you anymore. They're not going to be high enough in your vibratory state to actually want to play the game anymore, or to actually want to interact in those ways that you have in your past, because your frequency isn't going to be there anymore. And so much of this path is letting go of that. Letting go of what you think it's going to look like, right? Based on what you've experienced. What you're moving toward in regard to inner union with self is something that you don't remember experiencing in this lifetime. But it is who you are. It's who you've always been. And once you get back into inner union, it's going to feel so damn good that you're going to be so glad that you released all of these other things that you've been holding on to. I promise you. I promise you. Once you come into inner union, all these things that you've been gripping onto, you're going to look back and be like, oh my God. Wow. I was like, it's like you will look back at yourself and feel like, I don't really even recognize that person anymore, right? And now I'm in inner union, and now I'm like fully on the ascension path and continuing to go, because even after your inner union, ascension doesn't end, right? It just continues to expand. You continue to grow. Your consciousness continues to expand. Now you're in a place of unity consciousness, right? Now you're not playing any of those games anymore, and you don't want to. Now you're filled with peace. Now you're filled with love. Now you're back in the higher vibration and the higher frequency, right? That's the place that you want to have actual physical union with the twin. However it shows up, that's the place, that's the frequency that this dynamic actually exists. I keep saying that. My 3D relationship versus 5D union video, you guys can check that out if you'd like more information on that. The 5D and the higher frequencies within you is where those higher vibratory states of the twin flame dynamic occur. But if you keep holding on to the 3D game, right, within, because this is all an inside job, if you keep holding on to that 3D game, and we keep playing those games that we've used to play in the past, thinking that that's going to work, it's going to backfire every single time, right? This path is a you and you road. This path is a coming back home to self, coming back home to consciousness, coming back home to my I am presence. That's what this path is. And that is where actually the golden road opens up for you. Like I keep saying, if you just stay on this path and you keep going through it and you stop like struggling against it and resisting it and all of these sort of things, and you just flow with it and you allow it, and you're just like, this came into my life because obviously I am ready as a soul to awaken. Like what an amazing gift. I'm amazed at how many people really fight this this path, and it's the ego fighting it. It's the ego being afraid of its own destruction, right? It's afraid that it is going to have to like give up its reins, give up its power. And so we have to understand that that fear that is coming up, that I have to release you know, all of these programs and patterns that I used to run, they were never yours to begin with. The ego represents the false self. And so what this is actually doing is rebirthing the true you know, the unity you, the loving you, the awareness that is you, the peace that is you. I mean, this path, like, you're gonna feel better than you've ever felt in your entire life if you keep going on this path. This is the biggest gift. Awakening your twin flame path is such an enormous gift. So I implore you guys, stop playing the 3D game, right? I get that it's hard. I know. I was on this path for a long, long time before I came into inner union. A long, long time. Longer than like a lot of people probably. Because I was doing all of that. Fighting it and doing all of that. I get it. I know. And if I could go back and like fast forward it and like to what I know now, to what I didn't know then, I would 100% do it, right? You can't do that because that's part of the journey. It's falling down and getting up and falling down and getting up. So like in my heart, I'm just like, stop playing the 3D game, right? Get on the bandwagon with yourself, with your ascension, with your awakening. Allow this to take you, right? As Esther Hicks says, Abraham Hicks, one of my favorite quotes from Abraham Hicks, you know, this is just a paraphrase of that quote. This: throw the oars out of the boat. Stop trying to paddle against the river. Throw the oars out of the boat and allow the river to take you, right? What this actually means is that you are the river. So you're paddling against yourself when you're in that kind of resistance, right? You're paddling against yourself. Let the paddles go. Let the river that is you take you. This is the most incredible path once you get to inner union. It is amazing. Please, please, please focus on you, right? It's not even focus on you. It's just ascend, continue to ascend, continue to go through the awakening. That's your like, it's your freedom pass, right? It's the freedom key on this, in this reality. That is the freedom key. Your awakening, your consciousness. And the fact that you have incarnated here twice with your twin, right, in order to awaken you out of this is such an amazingly beautiful, beautiful thing. Once you get past and once you see past, this is so much more than just a 3D romantic relationship, right? This is like coming home to self. It's amazing. It's amazing, right? It is. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that resonates. It's okay if it doesn't. You guys have an awesome day.